Emery Anderson is a three-time Emmy Award-winning broadcaster. She is a speaker, keynote speaker, and author. She's working to help corporate leaders transform their teams from disengaged to elite performers. Welcome to the show, Emery.
Thank you, George. I'm happy to be here. Fun
Excited.
conversation ahead.
Yeah, excited to have you on. Tell us a little about your personal life, some more about your work, and why you do what you do.
Well, I've been a sports broadcaster for 35 years. I'm still an active sports broadcaster. Started with ESPN in 1989. I still work for them now. I work for a variety of other networks. And that part of my life has been a lot of fun, being in the boardrooms and locker rooms of some of the most elite athletes. So there's that portion of my life. My family portion of my life. I'm a mother of three kids. I live at the beach. I played collegiate volleyball, so I'm still a volleyball player at heart and play beach volleyball. So I've got all these little segments of my life. And then wrote a book called Cultivating Audacity, because what I learned in those boardrooms and locker rooms of elite athletes is kind of the need to take some risks, not reckless risks, but risks that are worth it. And watching these elite performers do it, I started to apply it to my own life, and have ended up developing some systems that I share with people in the book about how to get from where you are right now to what it is you want your life to look like. Not just your job, but it includes your job, but your entire life.
I appreciate that. Was it a function of you yourself were constantly looking to improve? Was it you just noticed some through lines to these athletes, these top performers? Was it one person?
I think a lot of people have FOMO, right, George? Right? The fear of missing out. I've never had FOMO. I've never had that, but I have the fear of staying the same. I always call it FOSS, because I think I've been surrounded by these elite athletes my entire life, and they're never done. They're always pushing to the next level, the next thing. And I can identify with that as a former collegiate athlete, but also being around these super elite performers. I've always been looking for, how can I be a little bit better at this? How can I stay a little more engaged in this? And so I think it's a combination of both just my upbringing with four older brothers, but also being surrounded by elite performers and watching them, that they're never a finished product.
I love the word audacity. I fancy myself a pretty audacious person. Do you think that that is a skill or a trait that anybody can get better at? Is some of it innate?
I think you can absolutely grow it and cultivate it. I'm curious, for you as an audacious person, like, how does that manifest for you? What does that look like for you, being audacious?
Whatever I want to do, I just do it. If I
There
want to
you
write
go.
a book, I write the book, start a podcast, become a speaker, start playing pickleball, whatever. I've never been afraid of putting myself out there and trying something new.
I love it. I love it. And what happens for most people, George, is that there's a barrier that stands between them and the thing they want to do. Because audacity is the willingness to take bold risks. That's the definition of it. But most people will have, you mentioned, never been afraid of it. Most people will have fear, time, money, or their inner critic that kind of stands between them saying, you shouldn't do that. That's not safe, or that's too expensive, or there's people that are more qualified than you. And so I think absolutely you can cultivate and grow audacity. And that's a little bit of what I teach in the book, is kind of pushing you forward that way, figuring out what your barrier is and then how to manage it. You're not going to get rid of it. You shouldn't get rid of it. Just how are you going to manage it?
I think that I love all of that. I wrote down that audacity is, in a way, an antidote to our ability to rationalize why we're not doing the things that we want to do. So I can talk myself into anything. Why didn't I do what I was supposed to do yesterday? I was very busy. This thing happened. But those
Mm-hmm.
are just excuses. And I am not a person who wants to live by excuses. So everything you said certainly resonates and makes sense to me, but also why it is that people don't do the things that they want to do, which is they talk themselves out of it. I can't afford enough time, or who am I to do this?
Yeah, exactly. And I think some people are afraid to dream it too. It was interesting in writing the book, the tagline is dismantle doubt and let yourself win. Originally, it was going to be how to dismantle doubt and take bold risks. But we found in testing that the word risk itself kind of freezes people a bit. They're afraid to take a risk for fear of what the outcome could be. And I think that's one of the things that's most important when you are cultivating audacity is knowing that no matter what the outcome is, you'll be okay. So it's not about getting the outcome you want. You talk about it, just trying it, whatever it is. It's about knowing that whatever the outcome is, you'll be okay with. There's like the mindset of audacity. There's, the behavior of it, and then there's the identity of it. And until you have the mindset and the behavior consistently working, that's when you start getting an audacious identity that you're talking about you have, where you're like, I'll try anything.
I recently learned about something called prospect theory and the idea of why we stay stuck. And we have these reference points, and moving away or improving ourselves moves us out of that reference point, which is in itself a risky thing that then positions me for potential loss. And fear of loss is twice as powerful as of the potential for gain. And so it's comfortable to stay where we are.
I love that. I love that. But the only thing that staying where we are, right? Staying stuck, staying safe, whatever it is, it ensures that no growth is possible.
Hmm.
So while you may be comfortable where you are you happy and satisfied? Look, man, if you're really loving your life right now, then no adjustment is needed right now. But if you're not loving it, then is staying comfortable really the solution for you? And that's, I think, where people have to get to. I mean, we've all heard it. The pain of when the pain or the fear of change becomes greater than the pain of staying the same, that's when change happens. Sometimes we don't let ourselves dream enough. But when you start to let yourself dream and say, okay, and if I fail, I advise people to fail right away, George. That's something you should know about me. I tell people, go get rejected, go fail the test, go do the thing, because they're so afraid of failing and being bad that once you fail and you survive it, well, then we can move on. What's the next barrier? Do you not have time? Or you not have money? Is your inner critic talking to you? But go fail immediately, a lot.
And I totally agree. In fact, I couldn't agree more. Do you find that that just through your work and the people that you speak with, is there a generational divide here?
Not really. What's really interesting to me is that I'll work with corporate leaders, for example, who really want to embolden their employees to take risks and know that it's okay. That okay, that you can tell that to an employee, but then there's failure and like, what if I get fired? So there's that kind of risk. There's people just starting their careers who they need a job. They need to be able to pay their bills. And is it too risky, the thing that they're looking at, that they won't be able? So we need to talk to them about what's worth it and what's reckless. And then there's a lot of people right around the 40, 50 years old who want to start a second act. They've been doing something they haven't necessarily loved, or they've finished with it. They've gotten to a point where they're not enjoying it anymore and they want to start a second act, but they don't know whether they can trust themselves to succeed in that. And for me, the success is actually in the trying. And that's the thing that's hardest to get over to people. When we're so outcome driven, but it's a process, life, right, is a process. So it's the whole process of keeping yourself engaged. And that's kind of the issue. I feel like people want to know, well, is it going to be okay in the end? Well, is there really an end to any of it? It's just a continuum.
How's it going to end? How's it going to work out? Is this going to work for me if I invest all this time? And what happens if it doesn't work?
Right.
And I think you touched on this. Do you invite, ask, instruct people to go to the worst case? If you try this and it doesn't work, what's that going to look like?
Absolutely. I call it catastrophizing. Catastrophizing. My first time on television, because I was a producer at ESPN first, my first time on television was in 70 million homes. That was not at all the plan, George. I was supposed to be in like a little regional sports network, but some things changed and I ended up getting an assignment I didn't expect. And I was paralyzed with fear outside the stadium. I'm going to be bad. I'm going to forget my words. I'm going to do this. I'm going to embarrass myself. I'm going to be judged. All these things, right? Well, of course I was bad. It was my first time on television. Of course I was embarrassed. Of course I was judged. People being like, oh gosh, that's not really good. All of that happened and I still survived. And it was in front of 70 million. And so I got up and did it again. And I always say the only thing that was better about the second time was that it wasn't the first time. It was still horrible. And each time, but the more comfortable you get in what you used to call failure, but now it's just data, because that's what I tell people. It's just data. Okay, I was bad on television. Here's what I did. Here's what I can try to do better. What? That wasn't that much better. All right, let's try this next time. All data to move you forward. But people like to hang on to that initial, what they consider to be failure, and not use it to direct them.
Failure is just data. That's a really powerful term. I like catastrophizing. I like all of it. Success is in trying. Circling back on the original subheading of the book and the change to let yourself win.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me more about letting yourself win.
We stand in our way a lot, talking ourselves out of things. And I was talking to one of my teenagers the other day, and he said, "Man, the voice in my head is so loud." And it's not even necessarily negative all the time. It's just a lot of conversation all the time that prevents the focus of what you're doing. So when I say let yourself win, let yourself swing, let yourself try something different. If that particular outcome that you're looking at doesn't happen, you can then morph into a different area, but there's growth all the time. That's where I say FOSS, right? The fear of staying the same. Well, you're just stuck and you're not growing. So, in order to let yourself win at anything, and this is really important, I feel like, for George, because people think about, oh, career, my career, I want to win at this or be promoted to this. But I'm talking about your life too. What do you want your days and nights to look like? For me, when I was in Bristol, Connecticut at ESPN's headquarters in my mid 20s, I hated shoveling snow. I didn't mind working at night. I didn't mind working 6 days a week. I didn't mind any of that. But I minded that my free time wasn't spent being active. I was inside shoveling snow. So for me, that meant moving to Los Angeles and becoming a Los Angeles bureau producer. I still worked just as hard with the people that I wanted to, but my days and nights when I wasn't working were much different. And for me, that's letting myself win by having a life where I can walk to the beach.
That that makes sense. You talked earlier about, I guess, understanding and taking calculated risks. And so the idea of letting yourself win, it's fair to say you're giving yourself permission. You are not just flying off the handle and doing something crazy. You're thinking about what it is that you want and how you want your life to look, making plans, and then actually executing on those plans.
Yes, but also opening yourself up to saying it's okay if I don't know what I want to do.
Hmm.
Like just asking yourself a couple of questions. Whenever I'm speaking to like a group of emerging leaders or college graduates, I say, here it comes. Everybody always asks you, what do you want to do with your life?
Mm.
So what do you want to do? And I say, just yell it out, and so they start yelling out, YouTuber, accountant, dentist, whatever it is. And then I always say to them, I asked you about your life and you yelled out a bunch of jobs. Is that all you want with your life? And then we talk about building backwards. Like some people know, hey, I don't want to work at a desk all day. I always say for me, I didn't want to work at a desk all day. I also couldn't see myself working outside all the time. I don't have a brain for math. Anything computer related flummoxes me. I get sick at the sight of blood. I can't add. I can't all this build backwards. Well, I do like sports. I love talking about sports. I love watching sports. So I backed myself into my career by what are the things I didn't want to do? And so it's okay. I feel like there's all this pressure for people to say, what do you want to do? Make your plan, go get it, go get it. Just start with the basics. What do you enjoy? What are you good at? What does the world need? And then what can you be paid to do? And figure that out. I love to garden, George. I love gardening. I think the world needs gardeners. People will pay for a good gardener. Nobody is paying me to garden. I kill everything I grow. So it's like it's great if you might love something, but if you're bad at it, you probably should look at something else. But those 4 questions are really important to ask yourself.
Yeah, it's really interesting. What a fascinating exercise when you're in front of that room of young people and you probably get similar response every time you do it. Is
Every
that just
time.
conditioning? We've just been
Yeah.
taught the wrong stuff.
Right. Just drive and do that. I mean, it's all the things that we learned growing up, right? You get up, you get a job, you buy a house, you get married, you have kids, whatever. You don't have to do any of that. You know, think about what it is that you'd like to do, but they're right at that stage where they're like, okay, I just finished school now, or I've just gotten my job if it's emerging leaders. And now I have to look at the next professional goal marker that society says I have to have. And it's like, well, you're not that much good to us as society if you're not happy. So, what are you good at? What do you love doing? What does the world need? That's where you should be.
Yeah, I love it. On the cover of your book is a peacock. Why did you choose
Yes.
that?
Peacock, because you want to be able to show it off. And it's hard. I was a shy person. So for me, audacity and taking bold risks, you've seen a peacock walk around, maybe if you've ever been out in a nature area or a zoo, and you see them walking around, and all of a sudden they're able to show you kind of their fantastic. That's audacity to me, is being able to open yourself up to that bold risk and say, here's everything I am, and maybe I fit into this environment I'm in right now, but maybe not, and I need to find an environment where my audaciousness is welcomed.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I imagine that everything that you're talking about, it could be as profound as I'm going to change my entire life. It could be I want to start, going to a different church, or I want to change my hairstyle, or I'm sick of
Mhm.
wearing these clothes. But it's the expectations that everybody assumes that I'm going to do this.
Yeah. Or if you're in a relationship that's not serving you, that's really tough, right? And you get stuck in that relationship that really isn't serving you, but people say you should be in. Well, maybe you need to work to leave that relationship. Well, why haven't you left it? Afraid? Maybe time? Maybe money? Maybe your inner critic? I mean, that's serious stuff. But that's what I would hope that you would walk through, is those four barriers again. And then there's a really key concept towards the end of the book, which is setting up your front row, those people that are going to push you and hold you accountable. I always say your front row is probably not your mom. It's probably not your best friend, because they want you to stay safe. Your front row are those people that are going to check in on you and hold you accountable and pick you up when things don't go well and point out the different directions you could go in. And so, this audacity, to your point, it isn't just your job. It could be a relationship. It could be where you live. Like for me, when I moved from Connecticut to California, I didn't know that I'd still have a job. I quit ESPN. They hired me back when I arrived at double the salary. That was so crazy. But I didn't have that guarantee. So, audacity is about making those decisions, the ones that'll lead you closer to who you are, where you want to be, your values and vision.
We talk a lot about being authentic, being yourself, and trusting your instincts, going with your gut.
Oh, yeah.
And I feel like those are all valuable things. Is that similar to my inner critic? Because I'm hearing voices in my head. Some are good, some are bad. How do I suss that out?
Well, first of all, decide whether you would say it to somebody else. That's a very easy thing, right? Because the example I give is my 12-year-old daughter who came home from school and she said, well, I'm stupid. I can't do math. And oh, I'm fat too. And I was like, whoa, like 12 years old, what
Big day.
happened? Yeah, exactly. And so I said to her, I'm very keen on body image, like very careful. And so I said to her, do you think I'm fat? She's never heard me say a bad word. And she's like, no, I'd never say that. And I said, well, would you ever say it to somebody? No, of course. And so we go back to that basic, like if you wouldn't say it to somebody else, well, then who is it that's saying that? Because that's not you. So the first thing I had to do with her, and that I recommend to people, is separate it from yourself. It's just a thought, George. It's just a thought. So for her, I said, let's give it a name. Give me a name of somebody you don't know. So she said Jerry. And so I said, okay, so if Jerry says to you, hey, you're fat, you're stupid, you can't do math, what would you say to Jerry? And she said, well, I'd probably say, shut up, Jerry. And I said, well, exactly. So when I hear her in the other room and she goes, I can't do this, I always yell, shut up, Jerry. And she's like, oh, mom, here it is. But the first thing is separating it so you can pick at it and examine it. Because I think you really hit it there, George, when you said you're hearing all these, some good, some bad. Well, let's just examine it from an area without emotion. Is it true that I struggle with math or whatever the particular issue is? But when we let the inner critic drive, well, that's not helpful to us because we didn't tell them where we're going. So for the inner critic, take the information and examine it if you want to, but you have to separate it first from yourself. It's just your superego trying to keep you safe by telling you it's too dangerous, it's too risky. Is it really?
Is it really? Anne-Marie, I love it. Somebody engages in this work. Sometimes it's instantaneous, sometimes the work's longer. How have you found people responding to it?
I think you must, I know that you must celebrate along the way. Like just by the fact that you're saying like it's longer, like you're trying to get somewhere, right? To a destination, to whatever it is, selling your business. It isn't that, it's the old, it's the journey, not the destination. But the problem is the work doesn't take long because the work can happen now, today. So you do one audacious thing today. For people who are very shy and timid, that may just be saying no. Hey, no, I don't want to do that. And then you get more comfortable with no after a while. But you have to take an action. I always say, okay, mindset is optimism, right? The belief that things will work out. Even if they don't work out the way you want them to, you'll still survive. Then there's the action, the behavior. Get up off the couch, say no, do the thing, make the call, ask the question, fail, fail a lot. When that starts to be consistent, that's your identity. That is the win. It's not just down the line when you have whatever it is that you think you want to have, the house, the job, the car.
I love it. Well, Emery, thank you so much for coming on. Where can people learn more about you and where can they get their copy of Cultivating Audacity? And for organizations that want to help their team become high level performers, how do they learn more about that?
Well, they can find me on my website, AnneMarieAnderson.com. There's an E on the end of Anne. You can also just email me at AMA@AnneMarieAnderson.com. The book Cultivating Audacity became available January 1st, and you can find it wherever you buy your books, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, or anywhere you buy your books. And I'd love to help people figure out the life that they want to live and enjoy it.
I love it. Well, if you enjoyed as much as I did, show Anne-Marie your appreciation. Share today's show with a friend who also appreciates good ideas. Go to AnneMarieAnderson.com. That's ANNE, MarieAnderson.com. Check out all things Anne-Marie. Get your copy of Cultivating Audacity wherever you buy your books. We'll certainly link that in the notes as well. Thanks again, Anne-Marie.
Thank you, George, for having me. I had a great time chatting with you.
Likewise. Till next time, remember, do your part by doing your best.